guys, and welcome again to another quick, short explanation. All right, so I'm still in the Northwest Prelim for the year 2024. I'm now on question 2. You will see that here on question 2.1, they said calculate the average share price at the time of the repurchase of the shares. This was a very interesting way of asking you to do a note 7. Okay, so you were doing note 7, but in a very, very interesting way. And then we'll do also our retained income note. So here we're basically doing note 7 and 8. But it is very important to know how to do these notes. So let's quickly do them and then we see how we can manage. Okay, so let's go to the information and the information what we're given. So I like to stick with what we know. Okay, so I'm gonna say here I'm doing a quick note number 7. Okay, all right. I like to stick with what we know. So here I'm gonna have my table like that, and then let me say at the beginning, ordinary share capital it was 30 million. I'm in 2023. I have 30 million here, so I'm gonna come and say 30 million at the beginning. At the end, we are not given. But at the beginning, we're told that the shares were 4 million. So at the beginning here, it was 4 million, like that. And then at the end, it is 4,650,000. At the end, it's 4,650,000, like that. All right. And then we are then told on more information that comes shares, information F. In January, the company sold another 800,000 shares. So we're going to issue 800,000 shares here. 800,000 shares were issued for a total of 6,720,000, for a total of 6,720,000. And then it says, in May, the company bought back 150,000. So in May, then you'd have your bracket here, and the repurchase is 150,000. Okay, now we don't know because here we need the average price. So that is what they wanted us to calculate. What value are we going to use here? The average price. That is very simple. To get that, you have to remember that here we can use the amounts at the top, where I'll take my share capital amount, which is 30 million plus 6,720,000, which gives me 36,720,000. And then I divide all of this by my number of shares, which is 4,800,000, which becomes 4.8 million, like that. Okay, so I then come here. Where is my adding machine? There you are. So come back to your place. So I'll then say here, it is going to be my 36,720,000. 36,720,000. 10 was missing there. Then I divide that by my 4.8 million. 4.8 million. And then that would give me 7 Rand 65. So it becomes 7 Rand 65. That is all they wanted. That is all they wanted. 7 Rand 65. And then you would have gotten this one. But what they wanted was for us to calculate that 7 Rand 65. Okay, very important. The examiner was trying to say open note 7, but in a different way. So the examiner can still make you open an ordinary share capital note, but in a different way. Okay, let's come here and see now what is happening. Retained income. Retained income. So the examiner gave us the balance at the beginning and then the net profit after tax. We know the next thing that's going to come is the repurchase of shares. Repurchase of shares. Let me open my bracket. On the repurchase of shares, I'll open my bracket, and I know the number of shares that the company bought back is 150,000. So I have my 150,000 here. And then I multiply. Do I multiply by the 870? Certainly not. In your mind already, you have the triangle. You remember the famous triangle. At the top, we have the cash flow amount, which is your 870. Here, it's the ordinary share capital amount, which is your average price, 7 Rand 65. And here we have the retained income amount, the amount above. Okay, some would say more. Okay, so we need the adding machine. We would say 8 Rand, 8 Rand 70, and then we subtract 7 Rand 65, like that. And then we would end up with 1 rand 5 cents. So I'll come here, it's 1 rand and 5 cents. And then I'll say 1 rand and 5 cents multiplied by 150,000 like that. And then in brackets, I'm going to end up with 1 million. Sorry, it is 157,000. 157,500. 157,500. Cool. Let's come to the next part now. The next part has to do now with my interim dividends. And here I have my final dividends. All right, let's see which one is easy to get. If I come here, shareholders for dividends. Once I see shareholders for dividends, that becomes my final dividends in that particular year. So I'm coming here, that one is 2,325,000. Not a problem. For the interim dividend, we are not given any information to get that. That simply means I need to get that figure, then I can get that figure. Let's have your calculators ready. So it means on my calculator, I'll now say, I'll start with the 1,650,000 at the beginning, 1,650,000 like that. Then I'm going to add my net profit after tax, which is 5,915,000. Are we still okay? Then I'll say minus 157,500 like that. And then I'll get that. Then I'll say minus the 3 million, which is at the bottom now, the 3,402,000. 3,402,500. 3,402,500. And then I'll end up with 4,005,000. So that becomes my dividends over here. Let me just erase that. And then I'm going to come with, okay. All right. Okay, let's quickly do that. Let's get a pen proper now. Okay, cool. So I'm going to end up with 4,005,000 like that. So once I get my 4,005,000, I can now get my interim dividends. To get my interim dividends, I'm now saying my dividends for the year, which is 4,005,000 minus 2,325,000. So I simply come and say subtract 2,325,000 like that. And then that will leave me with 1,680,000. That is how I would have completed my note 8. So in this case, I've done note 7 and note 8. Note 7, they didn't want us to complete it, all of it, but they wanted us to calculate the average price. In the retained income, the interim dividends were missing, so we had to do the bottom up calculation. All right, so I also got another question, and someone was saying, Mr. Simbi, how do I calculate the dividend payout rate? Because there's several ways in which one would have done that. So I'm just going to do again another short video in which I explain the dividend payout rate. Until next time, enjoy your studies and all the best.